our workflow. This is where you may want to use the link to the slides to be able to see this up close. But you can see that we've added the senior editor role that has a special role, not just to build community among our editorial team, but to think very intentionally about how do we foster a spirit of inclusive excellence. Because we don't simply want to reproduce many of the common kind of approaches in thinking about manuscript management that tend to privilege certain voices and exclude others simply by the way the system is set up. And so what we're trying to do is create a different system, and Stephanie is a part of kind of reworking this system a bit, and she'll share a little bit more about that now.
Great, thank you, Chris. So the other goal that I wanted to achieve for 2022 as senior editor was that I wanted to establish a process that maintained the inclusivity of the journal, even as it became more selective. And of course, as a journal, the journal tries to be diverse and inclusive, but it's a tricky balance to maintain, especially as submission numbers increase and then acceptance rates decrease. And even though the editorial team is quite diverse, we still have to be conscious that we're operating with certain standards and norms and biases that privilege some authors and not others. And so one way that I thought we could address this is by creating another layer of review that intervenes for manuscripts that have a lot of potential to make an interesting contribution, but they're not quite ready for the full review process for any number of reasons. And just in my years of having done the associate editor role, I did notice that every once in a while, a manuscript may have an interesting topical or theoretical or methodological contribution to make, but at least in the point at which they're submitted, they're not quite in a publishable or potentially publishable state at that point. And if I were to have sent it out for review, most likely it would have not been successful in the review process not because it's not good, it just wasn't ready. So my role as senior editor is also to serve as a developmental editor for those particular manuscripts that might fall in that category. And so my role will be to identify manuscripts that fall into that and provide an early intervention. So before a manuscript gets sent to an associate editor, I would be providing extensive feedback so that the author can potentially improve the manuscript, and it would come with an invitation to resubmit. It's not a promise to publish, and it's not exactly an R&R, but it's really a way to provide an early intervention with constructive feedback, and hopefully to get more early career scholars published, more authors based in diverse geographical regions published, and so on. And so that's really the first step to this. And perhaps in the future, this particular piece could potentially expand in other ways. But certainly serving as a developmental editor would be a first step for this first year in the role.
If you're an associate editor, just to know that Stephanie will likely flag that to you to let you know that she's already been working with this author. You, of course, have the autonomy to make whatever decision. All associate editors can still do a desk reject or decline before review, but she'll at least let you know this is an author. This, by the way, carries on a tradition. Krishna will tell you, you should sit sometime and you really should, we should write the history of this journal, because really it used to be that every single author, we would provide extensive feedback. There was kind of multiple publication lines, and there was a special line for authors that we just were going to go back and forth until their papers were ready. So similar to faculty that continue to get feedback throughout. And Kristen, you're welcome to share about those times and those years, but it's similar to faculty. There's I'm going to give you feedback until this is an A paper. I'll give you as many rounds of feedback as you want. That's really the spirit of how we began as a journal. And it's a way that we can continue that value and make that continue to be central to our mission. So